All right. First and foremost, thank you guys so much for coming out. My name is Rodney Pohl. I am the state senator for Michigan City, Chesterton Portage, District 4. I've got with me, I'm going to have him introduce himself. Why don't you come up?
My name's Randy Novak. I'm a new state rep representing District 9, Michigan City. I'm the new Pat Boy. So, yes.
So, this is, for some of you, I've seen some of your faces here before, and thank you very much for coming out. For those of you that are new, thank you especially. I think it's incredibly important right now more than ever that people remain engaged. I think one of the big issues that we had the last town hall about, which wasn't all that long ago, was about redistricting. And I think in this state, a lot of folks sometimes feel, they feel disenfranchised, they feel discouraged about the process, they feel like their voice isn't heard. I think with this last redistricting vote, I think that we demonstrated to a lot of different people across the entire country that Indiana is listening. They are listening to their constituents. You do have their ear. It was a very
in a sense.
The numbers were closer in the House than they would, and I will say this. Hosting I try to have as many of these as possible, and I've kind of upped the number of these that I've had as I've heard from folks across the state. Well, we're not hearing from our legislators enough. People aren't coming and talking to us enough. This past summer, there were a lot of organizations that held open town halls to their elected officials with hopes that they would show up. And some did and some didn't. But to me, that signaled, okay, even if I'm having, a number of them, let's up it. So I think this is number 15, I think, for me this year. It might be more than that. I was trying to go back through my social media and see how many we've announced, but we do these, I tend to do these in groups of 4. I'll always come to Michigan City, Chesterton, Portage, and I'll go to Westville as well. Sometimes in Westville, there's 10 people in the room. Sometimes there's maybe 20. But those 10 or 20 people, they showed up, they wanted information. I'm going to spend 2 hours with them talking about everything that they want to hear, the information that they want to know about. I've got to commend Randy. Randy's hit the ground running. Last week, we were having town halls out in Portage. That's not his district, but he's out there talking to the folks as well, introducing himself and making sure that, he could add his experience, which his experience is, how many years in the fire department? 33 years in the fire department?
33 years.
33 years in the fire department, 11 years on the council. He's got an experience, even though, I've been in the Senate for 5 years now, he's got an experience that goes way beyond mine. And so it is really great to have a voice like his that's there. Today, what we're going to do is this. We're going to talk a little bit about, the preview for the 2026 election. We're going to talk about SB1, which is a big issue from last year, property tax bill that really impacted your local communities, your school districts, your local governments, your libraries, and pretty much everything in between, and how we're already trying to fix what we did last year. And I want to make sure we save some time for questions. A lot of the stuff that's on this agenda might be burning things that are issues that you want to talk about. I try to start every town hall with the same sentiment. You guys are here to learn, and so are we. You guys may come from a completely different background. You may come from a completely different side of the political spectrum than your neighbor or myself. You're all welcome here. All of your voices will be heard. We're all going to be tolerant of everybody that's, no matter what their position is, so please be respectful. That's all I ask. I won't ask a lot from you, but I will ask that you just please be respectful. If you hear something that you don't agree with, let's not boo or hiss or throw tomatoes. Let's keep it civil. But yeah, I think, I love having these things, mostly because some of the best ideas that we've been able to put forward for District 4 have come from events just like this. So, to start off with, the big theme that you're going to hear this year, and you're starting to hear this a lot already, is affordability. Obviously, the last election, 2024, you heard some of these issues that were coming to the forefront. A year later, we're really in the middle of it. There are serious initiatives, specifically from our caucus, that are being put forward to try and alleviate some of those financial constraints that you're feeling. Say what you will about politics. You hear a lot of issues that are brought up, and a lot of finger pointing. You hear a lot of, well, that doesn't exist, or that does exist, or this is a real issue and it's not. You guys know what your bank accounts say. You guys know what your NIPSCO bill says. You guys know what your medical bills are coming up to. That's not something that somebody can spin to you and say that's a hoax, or somebody can say, hey, that don't believe the what your eyes see. You believe me. That's real. That is a real issue. And what I will say is this: we are putting forward some specific legislation this year that's trying to hit that stuff head on. One of the things that I gave to you was a handout that's titled the Session 2026 Preview. And these are some of the issues that my caucus is really trying to hit. Number one at the top, utilities. NIPSCO is, that's your energy provider. And I'm sure, whose NIPSCO bill went down this year? Yeah, I didn't think so. Whose NIPSCO bill went up? Yeah, all of you should have your hand up. It did. There was rate hikes that happened, and that's just what happens. So, in order to address this, I think one of the big things that we've really looked at is, okay, there's certain bills that are being put out to, one of the things that you've heard is accountability. The gentleman that was joining us at our last town hall earlier today, a guy by the name of Chuck Mosley, he's got a great bill that really addresses the IURC. That's the commission that actually decides when NIPSCO can come and ask for a rate hike. So you may say, I didn't use any more energy that I used last year, but my bill went up. Well, that's because there was a rate hike. The amount that you were paying for that same amount of energy, it costs more. So, Chuck has kind of tried to take that on head on, and there's some of the things that are in this agenda that speak directly to that. His is more about who is making these decisions. You got a question?
Yeah, since you're on the topic, data centers and the huge construction that's going on east of here, what's to stop? They're sucking up all the energy.
Mm-hmm.
What's to stop NIPSCO from getting rate increases when they start running short of energy? Them and we end up paying.
So it's a great question. For those of you who couldn't hear it, and I should have mentioned this at the beginning, there's actually a microphone. If we get questions, to get folks to speak up in the microphone, because I believe this stuff is all going to be taped, and I want people to be able to hear who are watching this elsewhere, hear questions in particular, and sometimes other people in the audience might not hear. So if you do have a question, we'll try to use that. But the question that was specifically asked was about data centers and the usage of energy there, and what's to
Carlisle's.
over.
Are we gonna?
Yeah, well, here, Mr.
Well, but I think do you reference the one in New Carlisle, or are we gonna be paying for that one? That was his specific question. We understand about it, yeah.
So the questions about energy, about the usage of energy and these data centers, and that is. Data centers is the topic. I think I said this at the last town hall we were at. We're going to have to do a whole town hall just on data centers. These are basically these new developments that are popping up. That there's a ton of questions about what the amount of energy that they're using, what the amount of water that they're using, what tax incentives there are for them, what jobs they're bringing. Yes, what affects the environmental issues. We could talk about data centers, and we're going to have to. That's the thing, is we want to provide you the best information. I've actually been attending specific events about data centers just so I can inform myself, as it pertains to what can be done about the usage that's there. You've already seen that there's bills that have been passed in the legislature that have anticipated what happens with these data centers. In particular, last year I think it was Senate Bill 424 and 425, which was a bill that came out that basically said, okay, well, these data centers are going to use a lot of energy. That's one thing we do know. We don't know specifically how much. We may not know, the megawatts that they're going to use or the gigawatts that they're going to use, but we do know that they are going to they're going to increase the amount, and ultimately it's going to put a strain on the grid. The grid's not likely in its current format. The grid is not ready for that amount of usage, and as a result they're likely going to come to us and say, well, we need a rate hike for this, we need a rate hike for that. Some of the bills that we have here specifically address that. You've seen in certain counties across the entire, particularly Stark County right here, our neighbor over in Stark County, they just put a moratorium on data centers. They said no data centers for a year until we get more information, and you're starting to see this pushback because a lot of the decisions that are being made for these data centers in particular, the questions that are being asked, which are great questions, the ones that we just talked about as far as usage and utilities and water and all that stuff, a lot of the developers will tell you this: we don't know yet. We just need to build it and then put it in somebody, and then it'll be determined. And that's just not. It's not going to fly. That's not going to fly. People can't. They rightfully so cannot accept that. They're going, wait a second. That to me does not make sense. I need my questions answered, or I'm going to show up with 1,000 people to a county council meeting that I've never been to in my life. Never thought I'd have to go to a county council meeting, but people are very, very pissed off.
Like you stated the last one, once it's built, it's built.
Yeah.
They're not going to go, oh wait, it didn't work out.
We screwed up. Yeah, let's close it
Take
down.
it down.
Yeah.
I mean, when it's done, it's done. So we need the answers up front.
So yeah, to address that, some of the things that have been proposed was, well, let them do small modular reactors, and the utilities will build these small modular reactors, and then therefore it's going to alleviate the grid. And a small modular reactor, by the way, is basically a small nuclear reactor. And that's clean and efficient, and that's the way that these things would be powered. There's questions about that, because here's the thing: is small modular reactors don't exist in the United States as of right now. There isn't one that's available that's up and operational. There are some in Europe, and so they are what you would call, kind of this experimental, approach. The issue is last year, this was a bill that I really advocated against. I did not like this bill. I voted against it, but Senate Bill 424 and 425 said, well, let them build them, and then ultimately, from the time that somebody starts drawing the first drawings, and everybody that sits in the meeting that's getting paid as a consultant, and the shovel that digs the first, bit of dirt in the ground, and then on top of that, to the day that we turn the thing on, we'll just take that amount for the utilities that whatever those costs are, and we'll just ask for a rate hike and build that into you guys' bill, your bills. I mean, that basically makes you guys venture capitalists. You guys are spending money on a venture that has not happened yet here in the United States, and it's essentially a blank check that you guys are writing. I don't feel comfortable with that, because there's no. But it passed. It passed, but and the issue with that is, I don't feel comfortable with that for a number of reasons. One, when you're a venture capitalist, you get a rate on return. Like if I were to invest in a small startup and I put all my money into it and it turns out great, well, great. I get a massive return on investment. If it goes kaput, well, I just lost all my money. The problem is these things haven't been set up yet, so the fact that you guys are paying for them, or could potentially be paying for them, I think is incredibly problematic.
Didn't House Bill?
Wait.
Oh yeah, we're good.
You got my.
That's
Speak loud enough.
No, what? He's next. He's what he's saying.
yeah.
My comment's going to be very brief.
Sure.
Whatever happened to solar? I mean, those data centers have acres and acres of flat roofs. Why can't they be covered with solar panels that could at least help supplement the energy requirements of those facilities?
So that's I mean, you guys can hear that because it's got the microphone. But yeah, the idea that I don't think we should ever give up on any of the other renewables. I think that everything should be on the table, because energy is an issue that should be multifaceted. Two, essentially, what the requirement would essentially be, as these things are being proposed to the state of Indiana, these are good proposals. I think, the idea that if we're going to be providing, cutting deals in order to provide these data centers or make us, that there's going to go somewhere here in Indiana. What are going to be the restrictions? What are going to be the requirements? And the idea that that solar be a part of that, I think that's a fair question. One of the questions that came up last time was, well, why can't we also go back, and if we're going to be cutting these deals to allow small modular reactors that people are going to be paying for, why are we not also opening back up net metering, which is dealing with solar as well? The idea that people invested in solar early for their own households. Net metering was something that actually made it worth it. It was an investment that paid off their initial investment in that actual equipment, and it allowed them to actually potentially at some point make money off of the solar that they were actually putting back into the grid. That net metering sunset in 2022. Unfortunately, we tried to include that as part of as an extension. And I think that it begs the question: if we are looking at different options so that people can save money, how come we're not bringing back net metering as part of that? And I think that that's a fair thing that you'll probably see movement on. Do you have a question?
My question is regarding non-disclosure agreements and the city being involved in non-disclosure agreements without the transparency. That's exactly what happened here in Michigan City. The mayor signed an NDA and then basically told all of us that it wasn't going to be a data center, and now it is. So now I've got a data center going up in my backyard. I'm not happy with that. So how are your feelings with these multi-million-dollar companies coming in, signing NDAs, and not giving all of us a chance to speak about it?
So NDA stands for non-disclosure agreement. One of the recently, a couple days ago, went to an event here in Northwest Indiana that was, data center information. Here's an individual that is talking about these things, a consultant working about it. And that was specifically my question. My question to him was, do you feel these NDAs are too expansive? I could understand if you did not want to release a trade secret about, how your specific data center, the technical components of it were going to work so that your competitors weren't stealing your information. But the information as it pertains to energy usage, the information about water usage, the information about,
about it, period.
Yeah, I think that, and to be honest, he was actually candid about it. He said, I think that the NDAs, yes, I think that they are too expansive. They are too inclusive of information that probably should. And he basically said, there's the saying, you mess around and you find out. He basically, without saying so, had said, a lot of these developers are starting to find out the hard way. When you see local governments that are putting moratoriums and saying no data centers, for an extended period of time, now it puts them basically on the defensive. They've been put in a situation where they have to go out now and, they're going to have more information that's available because people are pissed. I've never seen 1,000 people show up to a county council meeting about a data center, not, or about just in general, not even like a specific proposal. So I think what you're seeing now is such a pushback from the community, and it's not from one side of the spectrum. You see people that are Democrats, that are Republicans, that are libertarians, that are showing up in droves specifically because they felt like they're left in the dark. And I think that I think that's a healthy kind of part of where we're at right now.
And I think all of Michigan City was left in the dark with this data center going up on Royal Road. We were all left in the dark, and that's not fair to us, and it's not fair to the people around it.
Yeah, I mean,
and because I even sat in the air quality with IDEM. They've already made their decision.
Yeah, and I think I'll say this, I think it is fair. It's a fair point to bring up that, these things are so new, and, there are so many questions that are wrapped around it that, you're going to, to my point earlier, that you're going to have, once it's there, it's going to be there. These things make a lot of money. They're not going to, once it's built, it's not as if, okay, well, we made a mistake, let's tear this thing down. It's going to be
tax abatement.
Yeah,
That's all.
and I think that, to be honest, I think from the state level, I think that the state has not provided enough of a structure for these things so that it says, okay, if you are going to bring one, here's what should be provided. Here's the information that should be public. Here's the benefits that should be made to the community. Here's what, for example, well, who should be building these things? Whether or not these are in, you should be able to bring individuals from outside of the state that are fly-by-night. I think that these are all really, really great. I think the questions that could be asked could be structured from the state level to say, if you're going to build these across the board, these are what the requirements are.
So I think part of the problem, and correct me if my figure's off, because Monday will be my 8th week in this job. So, but the state's economic development team is on a totally different page than the local government.
Yeah.
So if the figure I heard was $43 million that the state has pushed into this deal without coming to the local authorities and saying, is this something you guys want? So the state's pushing it without asking, is this the right place in Michigan City, or is this the right place in LaPorte County? And we all have industrial parks. We all, what a lot of us do. I mean, maybe there's a place to put it that would be a lot better than near residential or golf course in different places. So it's imperative that the state, that we work closer together.
So one other thing, here's I think a really important point as well too. This was a point that was made at the town hall we had earlier, particularly on data centers. You had an individual that said, I don't think it's any coincidence that the year that we've seen so many big cuts from SB1 to these local communities, essentially putting these local budgets 40%, essentially cutting 40% of their budgets, 40% of their budgets, that in that same year you've had this big push from data centers to be able to come in and say, well, we have something that can help you. And this idea that here's an influx of cash, here's an economic development opportunity. And so, it's really put the strain on local governments and I know it's not saying like, oh, well, they have to take it. But I do think that, from the state level then, if that's the case, one, information. We have to provide more information, and we have to require that there be more information, because I think it's only fair to these communities. And two, the benefits for it.
Quick question, the 43 million that you mentioned, was any of that involved in the maze project?
That was for the maze project.
So the state gave 43 million of tax abatement?
My understanding,
I don't know that figure. I mean, yeah.
That's the figure I heard from.
Because they should not have gotten any tax break.
Could you go to the, I was going to say, we're trying to make everybody go to the mic. We want to make sure that you got a question.
Yeah, well, a question and a quick comment. As far as solar, they're unreliable, inconsistent for these projects, and it destroys hundreds of thousands of acres of farmland that I personally have picked up a nasty habit of called eating. So that's for the future. Now my question is, the cost upgrades for these projects, House Bill 1007 was passed last year, I believe, which requires 80% of the cost of these to be picked up by the hyperscale utilities. Are they prepared to keep pushing for that to make sure that they do that?
Are they going to keep pushing for
80% of the cost?
For House Bill 1007 to make sure that if NIPSCO has to upgrade, INM needs to upgrade, 80% of the cost of those upgrades are bore by the hyperscale utility projects, like the data centers.
Absolutely. I mean, I absolutely think that's you have to. I mean, if they are the ones that are building them, why are we the ones that are paying for them?
Can I just say? Yeah. So last week I was at a meeting and there was representatives from the other side of the aisle, and once you're elected, it doesn't matter if you're an R or D, we should all be in it for the same reason. So I'm not throwing jabs. But the explanation on the 80-20 that you just mentioned was, so that's 80% savings to the people. And the gentleman that I'm sitting next to, it goes, we looked at each other like, that's a 20% increase. That's not an 80% savings. It might be, so... And as I stated at the other meeting, sometimes common sense is very elusive when it comes to something. That's the nicest way I could put it. So with that, I'll let. Yep. You got to go to a phone. So
another question.
Hi, yeah. So I was just wondering, with all of this talk about that and what we expect to see in the coming legislative session, is there hope to tighten up all of those codes and regulations that, like you just stated, were left almost intentionally vague at this time? I think the problem here in Michigan City was the special exception request to use an M1 zoning for it when that's light industrial. And since there is not enough data on whether these things fall into a light industrial or a heavy industrial, and the data that we certainly do have already, it shows that it's a heavy industrial. So are we going to have legislators pushing to tighten that special exemptions clauses and really make sure that these things are away from the community, away from children, away from schools, and away from our houses?
Yeah, it's a great question. Pertaining to zoning and how individuals or how these data centers are ultimately classified. I think it kind of demonstrates these are essentially. Data centers have been around for a while, but their influx into this area is relatively new, and so local communities are kind of getting blindsided by the idea that, like, okay, well, this thing's coming in. what is this? And I think a very, very difficult part about that is as well is that, how these things actually come to fruition is that you have developers that come to a community and say, I am building, I'm a builder of these data centers. I don't have an end user yet. I just build these. And so I don't know if it's going to be Google. I don't know if it's going to be whatever. I just know the general parameters of the building that I want to build and where I want to build it. So I think it really puts it, a lot of these locals are getting beat up, and a lot of this is kind of, their arms are kind of tied behind their backs in a certain sense. Only because their local ordinances never accounted for the idea of data centers. Nobody knew that these things were going to be, specifically coming in this way. So I think to that question, I think from a state level, it should be a little bit more uniform. I love the idea of giving the locals the flexibility to really match what they want. I'm probably one of the biggest proponents of local control. But I do think that in order to prepare, since you have the Braun administration is seemingly full bore on data centers, then they need to be doing a lot more to help the local communities prepare for that. What are they going to be classified as? Where are you? If you are doing these economic development deals, where being a little bit more transparent about that, letting people know what it is, what they're, how these things are going to be coming to fruition. And I do think that can be done through regulation as well. These, the classification could be something that is done from the state level. Now, whether or not, I haven't talked to the local, the local organizations, the local government organizations like Advanced Indiana Municipalities. I would love to hear from them about what they feel like the best approach is going to be from the local government as well, because I think that it would be an error for me to speak on their behalf as to whether or not what the flexibility is that they want. But I do think it does need to be, because these things are relatively new, to your point, they do need to be classified. And so people do, if I'm buying a property, for example, that's across from what I think is farmland and it's zoned M1 light industrial, I'm not going to assume that that's going to be a data center next year, right? Like, I bought this house, I built my house. I want to know that that's where I'm putting my, where I'm putting my roots. I'm not going to feel like I need to move because I don't want to be across from this. So I do think that that's a very fair point. I think it is something we should do.
Just one.
Yeah.
The other thing I'll add is I agree with Rodney that there's certain things we might be able to put some guardrails on it, but the locals, so, and I don't want to ruin everybody's image of the State House, but I'm a newcomer. But if you think the State House is going to be able to fix something or pass a law that's going to be perfect for 92 counties throughout the state of Indiana, it's going to be almost impossible. And that's what happened with SB 1. Per the governor, his own words sitting in a meeting with him, is they went after 2 counties, which is basically Carmel and Fisher's area, and that's how this all came about, because they had to fix the growth in those 2 counties, and we're feeling the effects of it. So I think the local authorities need to do more. The county's currently working on the comprehensive plan in the county, and just say, if we're going to do data centers, they have to be in this area. If you're going to do it, or just say you're not going to do them at all. Whatever you're going to do, it needs to be done. But I do think the state, downstate, we can do some things to kind of tighten it up with the disclosure and get it out front, and so everybody knows all the information up front so they can make educated decisions. So.
Are you planning to do that for us right here and now?
Absolutely. Just so you know, since we had to go down for 2 weeks of redistricting, that 2 weeks came off of this next year's session, because it was a special session called by the governor in an attempt to make it not look like a special session that cost the taxpayers money, which is exactly what it was. Our session now ends the end of February, is what we're being told. So to get anything passed in that time period, I'm being told by everybody it's going to be very, very fast, and complex issues are going to be very difficult to get through. So I'm just being 100% honest with you. The following year, absolutely, it's a long session, it's a budget session, but you can speak better of this, but it's just the reality of what we're stuck with now.
Yeah, and again, I kind of said this earlier on. I want to make sure that we're getting to the whole legislative preview. I think we're going to have to do a town hall just on data centers, and I think it's going to have to be in multiple communities because it really is. It is new. It's an issue that people demand answers for, and I think that's totally fair. I think it's absolutely fair.
Can we get a promise to have it soon?
I think the next time we're going to be doing them is going to be after the legislative session, probably. But yeah, I mean, we're talking February, after February.
Because this legislative session, and we usually have a week off in between, there's not gonna be a week off in between, so it's gonna run straight through 2 months, so.
Yeah, and my apologies. I wasn't feeling well this morning. Angie Nelson Dice, Mayor
That's the mayor behind that
Good
mask.
morning. Just a couple of things, yes, and thank you for what you're going to do and following up. But I want to clear up a couple of things. This is a unicorn project that fell in our lap. And I will say, just to give some dates so that people know this, is that, this location was red tagged twice, once in March and once in April. Had no idea at that time. And they did pay those red tag fees. They got cited, all of that. And when they came for a zoning verification, there had not been a conversation, with any of us. But once that zoning verification happened and it was identified that they wouldn't talk to us without an NDA. This is the first time I've ever signed an NDA for any cause. And again, it was too big of a project that the council needed to be involved. And I will say, they said, the city said this is not common. Well, that's not what was really said. And sometimes the media will take liberty, is that I revoked my NDA and said that I wasn't moving forward. And I did revoke the NDA, and it expired in early August. So I never had a conversation after that time because there was no agreement that I could defend. And again, at that time, the next step was, well, they still can bring it forth because there was nothing that had anything to do with zoning, anything that had with the taking of the land. We did not own that. But I want to clarify that. Yes, I did say that I wasn't moving forward with this project because I removed myself from that process purposely because we could not agree on the terms and conditions of that agreement. And that's a fact. Even with the last conversation that was had, I hung up on everybody on the call because I said, this is BS. Why did you go to the state? You went to the state and got an agreement before you even got it from the city. That's unheard of. That's not normal.
Yep.
That's not normal. So when that announcement was made, they had already ghosted us at that point. So it's really interesting when they got the announcement from the state. I'm like, okay, well, they haven't talked to us in, however long, and now they want to talk to us again. And then we still couldn't come to an agreement. So I issued the press release stating that I'm done. I revoked my NDA, here we are. If you want to do this, you need to do your own workshops and you need to work with the council because I'm not the approving authority. Now, we are the guinea pig in this whole situation right now because we, I think, are the only one that had a brownfield site. I think most of these locations, and this is just for public, information, I think a lot of these locations are trying to take land, or the city owns the land, or it's farmland, or it's in the middle of a space where there's no water or no sewer or no utilities there. So this is a monster that's happening all over the country. And as long as we're, utilizing all of the services that we're using, and they keep going big tech and big AI, where you only use, 1 or 2 people to run a whole facility, this is the direction that everywhere is heading. And there are no controls because it kind of landed here, and I do believe timing is everything. I do believe that because, I was told that, this was possibly going to be some logistics center where heavy hauling trucks and things like that. Well, downstate, and I don't know which bill it is, and you can help me with that. There was a bill that passed 4 data centers in the State House. And right after that, I think it triggered just it triggered just a whole landslide of things that were happening. So yes, believe me, if we could start over again, because let me tell you, we've spent a lot of energy that we don't want to spend on this at the city.
Yeah.
A lot of energy on just information, misinformation, request, personnel time, and it's what it is at this time. But again, it's a unicorn that dropped in the community, and I think now you're starting to see, oh, now we have these meetings trying to educate people, but you know, we're already down that path, and this is where we're at. So again, I think you, Rodney, I mean, Senator Poe, you did a fabulous job down at the State House, and I think it's important. And I don't want Senate Enrolled Act 1 to be a crutch either for data centers.
Yeah.
This was a brownfield site that came after they owned the property for multiple years, and I think they were going to have a tenant regardless of what that type of tenant was. It was going to happen since we don't own the property. But I do agree about the zoning piece of it, because the data and the historic data allows this to happen, and there are several examples of it. So if anything needs to be tightened up, it probably is that.
Mm-hmm. And again, I think really the locals have kind of been really blindsided. You know, I think that there's a lot of about facing things that should be, or things that should be out in the public, that, you know, when these data centers come and they say, hey, listen, we're just, you know, this is all that we are intending to do. This is, you know, what our operation is. But you can't say anything to the public about it because you've signed an NDA. I think that is incredibly problematic because it puts these local communities in a situation where it leaves too many question marks out in the public. And it's, again, the way that it was put earlier in the day, where in the same year that local governments had just basically had their whole budgets ransacked, you know, the idea that, hey, well, here's this economic development deal that we can work out for you. We've got money from the state. We've got all this stuff. It really has put these at a time where there really wasn't enough energy to, or time to look into how these local communities were supposed to rebound from SB1. I mean, that was last year. That was the red alarm. You know, the 5 sound alarm where people were going, we have to figure out a budget. We're going to spend all summer figuring out these budgets. And then all of a sudden it's like, you know, also you guys are going to also have your hands full because you're going to have these projects that are going to be coming at you and people that are also in the community that are coming at you. And I think it has just been overwhelming for these local communities. And I don't think from the state's perspective, if they're pushing these deals, if the administration is pushing these deals, I think the administration has failed these local governments in helping them prepare and helping those communities prepare and looking, you know, and really identifying locations where people would feel more comfortable. I know that, and I live in Chesterton, the outcry when they tried to locate one over at the old golf course, you know, which is right across the street from a subdivision. People were livid, and rightfully so. They had no information. So, again, I'm going to call it right now. We're doing the data center town hall. We're going to have to. Okay, I did want to get back to some of this stuff. Randy's got some stuff I want to talk about as well. But on utilities, some of the things that we wanted to make sure that we were doing is, sorry.
Hubby, I drive an electric car, 100% electric. I don't pay at the pump the road tax. The state charges me a road tax. I don't mind it. I love driving on smooth, clean roads, and I gotta pay for it. My problem is, I'm retired, I don't drive that much, just say round numbers. I put in 100 miles a month. A salesman puts in 10,000 miles a month. He pays exactly the same state road tax that I do. Now, whenever you buy a car, new or used, you got to put the mileage into the BMV. Mm-hmm. Why can't they take that mileage, and every year I submit, when I got to renew my license plate, my odometer reading, and be charged for the mileage that I put on my car? That salesman that puts all them miles on there is gotta pay his price for having a nice roads to drive in like I do. I should not have to pay exactly the same thing he does, and he takes advantage of it.
Road funding.
Whole nother end.
That's a whole nother animal. Can we do this? That's part and parcel of one of the bills that I think I'm going to talk about. I want to stay on utilities right now, and I will get to that question though, because I do think it's a fair question. You're basically talking about a usage. It should be tied to usage as opposed to just a flat tax. I'm sure that the BMV would probably tell you, and NDOT would probably tell you, you're talking about a administrative nightmare. You're going to have people that are coming out of the woodwork about it. But I have something that is very similar to what you're talking about, and we'll get to that in a minute. I do want to stay on topic though with utilities and kind of get through this just so we make sure.
Yeah, well,
Did you have anything on utilities or data centers, real quick?
Well, sort of on data centers, but not exactly. Sort of.
Yeah.
Okay, my thing, and I didn't have anything to do with the data center in Michigan City, and I'm not going to make a judgment. But the only thing I will say, I'm really glad that they used an old, a site that was already there, instead of taking up new farmland and going out someplace in the county and
Sure.
taking beautiful farmland that.
Sure, absolutely.
So I like to see the infill. And the other thing I'll tell you is that, us as people, we all have a lot of power. And so just a week and a half ago, found out about that there was going to put a gas station up on Highway 12.
Yep.
Right on the
by Michiana Shores.
right on the border of
Yeah,
India.
truck stop.
There's already 2 gas stations there, and they're not fully utilized. I mean, they're not. I drive by there all the time, and there's a lot of traffic on that highway. It's not traveling traffic. It's a lot of people coming from Chicago, summer people, and all of that. So, but we managed to, with the people that got together, we got the variance canceled because they were going to buy 65 acres. I mean, that's a big
Huge.
gas station.
Yeah, it's a truck stop.
And we're not that crazy. I mean, we think that a lot of the trucks are probably bypassing the way stations, coming on 12. I mean, why would semis go on 12? There's nothing in New Buffalo.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to say about data centers, and this is kind of like there's other things also that are included, but if you listen to the Business Channel, there's a big opinion out there that a lot of these data centers, they're saying they're going to put all these data centers all over the place, and everybody's trying to rush in because the first one there gets the utilities, and so if you're the last one, but Jim Cramer, at least, he says they do not have the money to build all these data centers they're proposing. So my concern is that we build a bunch of stuff and then in 5 years it's gone because they move on to something else. And we're stuck with the waste of buildings and stuff that we don't want in our neighborhood. So I just, I think development is good, but we have to do it wisely.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and I mean that is definitely much more at the local level because that is more about making sure that your zoning is that's purely a zoning issue at that point. You're talking about making sure that where your M3 zoning or your industrial zoning is that would accommodate these centers, or the only place that would be by right use for these centers is located far enough away that it's going to be in an area outside of being across from it residentially. The other aspect too is developmental designs. If the concern is, and if there's there really is an issue as to that these things are going to be abandoned, I haven't heard that aspect of it, but that again comes to a developmental designs. What do your local ordinances say as to when you're building this? What the design of that building has to be so that it could potentially be something else. Who's really, really good at that? It's a great case in point. I just heard you talk about the dispensaries. Have you guys driven on on 1220 to go up to Michigan where you see all these dispensaries? Do you ever notice that they look like other types of buildings? Like that one looks like that could be a Starbucks, or that one looks like that could be an office building. They were very smart and said, if you guys are going to build all of these things, there's a boom, but there's going to be a bust. And at some point, you're building our infrastructure for the future. You are building our future, restaurant right there. That you're building our future, office building right there. They were, credit to New Buffalo. They're pretty damn smart in saying, okay, you guys want to build it? You're here now, but we want to make sure that it's not going. You're not going to build it in the shape of a gigantic weed leaf because that's what you think is cool. You're going to build it along our design centers.
That would be built.
It would be in that, yeah. But again, when
Thank God you're not a developer.
yeah, but again, when it goes legal federally or when it comes legal in Indiana, I don't think there's going to be 30 dispensaries along the state line anymore. I think that and New Buffalo was smart enough to see that. Question on utilities or data.
Yes, Ray Maloney from Michigan City.
Hey, Ray.
I attended the hearing where the data center gained approval from the council. So my question is, Randy Novak says $43 million in state subsidies were granted for that, and other tax abatements were also granted. My question to the mayor is, why did her allies on the council approve it, knowing those tax abatements were in place? Why not reject it? Those were her allies that were on the council. I would have rejected it, and I'm not really against a data center per se, but I'm totally against raising our taxes here in Michigan City and increasing spending in government, local government. We just had Mayor just implemented a new wheel tax. Perhaps the taxes from the data center, if we had obtained every penny we could have replaced the need to have a wheel tax. So that's my complaint is we're increasing our taxes here locally, and we're letting Phoenix Development not pay, just what every developer should pay.
So a couple things. One, what I don't want is, I want to make sure that we're kind of staying on statewide issues. I know that the data center here it's a Michigan City issue, and it's probably best for a Michigan City Council meeting. But as far as the wheel tax in particular, how that does relate to the state. With SB1, which is one of the bills that we're going to be talking about, the state last year passed SB1, which again I did not vote for. Randy wasn't there to vote no, but I'm assuming he would have as well. They're requiring the locals to pass a local wheel tax because in order to get funding for the roads. Which again, essentially, that is the state holding our locals over the barrel of a gun, saying, you want state money, you go and raise it yourself. That was specifically what was told to us. If they want it, if they want local money, they can go raise it themselves.
Then why did we give the Phoenix Development any tax break then? Because we know our taxes are going up.
I mean, I can't answer that personally. I mean, I don't know. I wasn't part of the decision. I mean, it's a fair question. It's one that I think probably best at the city council meeting.
And the number I heard was that 43 from the state. But here's the thing, when the state gives incentives, they don't call down and call the mayor's office and go, hey, and all the council members go, this is what we did, you guys are on your own. There's no communication there.
So they didn't have.
I don't believe it's not, I kind of heard that from an inside meeting. I didn't read it on social media. I didn't.
The hearing, that all the tax breaks were laid out. And now I'm hearing they got more tax breaks, so that's why.
But when you're talking tax breaks, I'm talking incentives. I'm not. Don't quote me that it is a tax break from the state. I get it, but it's an incentive from the state economic development thing. I believe that the abatement that they got from the city might have been on personal property. So the mayor's shaking her head. So it's not on on property taxes. So, but like he said, we could have a whole conversation about that.
Yeah, Ray, to your point, thank you very much for that perspective, because I do think it's important. I mean, I'm looking at these things going, these data centers are going to be making money, tons of it, and they can bring economic development, they can bring some tax base to the local units. I tend to think if that's the case and they're backed by some of these billion-dollar corporations, I struggle to see the incentives that are giving. that are being given to the data centers. But that's from the state. From the state Senate side, I'm not in the position that a lot of these locals are, and they could probably explain it to you better as to why they felt like a benefit should be provided in that instance. Moving on, I do want to make sure that we are staying on topic here with some of this, some of the legislative preview, because it's that at the end of the day, I mean that's what this.
Going on.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. I started off talking about affordability and and looking at what our agenda is specifically set out for. On affordability, I mean, you guys know the crunch that you guys have been feeling, and NIPSCO and your utilities are definitely one of those major aspects of it. One of the easiest ways that we looked at is how we could help from the state side. I don't know if you guys knew this or not, but your NIPSCO bill has sales tax on it. Your bill includes, money that is actually being, what you're paying on your electric bills going down to the rest of the state. Our position on it was, well, then, you know what, let's cut the sales tax at least for a period of time, so that this spike in utilities can be figured out, because a lot of it's being attributed to other things. People are saying, well, data centers, the amount of usage has increased over time. There's development, etc. No matter what, at the end of the day, I mean, when people are paying 20% of their income to utility bills, that's a problem. So, in order to alleviate directly off the cuff for everybody, we're looking at a 7%. The sales tax that's included on your bills, just repealing that. These options here are kind of like our Swiss utility knife. These are, looking at like, okay, if this works, this is great. If this works, this is great. But this is essentially the approach that we're taking. The people that we know that got hurt the most with these rate utility hikes are folks that are on fixed incomes, folks that are either on low income, folks that are retired, folks that are disabled veterans. These are the individuals that we know that when push comes to shove, if your utility bill goes up $100, that's $100 you don't have. So now it's a matter of, do I eat? Do I pay my rent? Or do I just kind of let this NIPSCO bill sit and then hope that they don't shut my gas off or they don't shut my lights off? What you guys have probably realized is, before there was a little bit better of a grace period for folks that were in trouble, with it financially, as far as getting their utilities shut off. You would have to actually have somebody come out and manually shut the utilities off. Now it's push button. So the idea that somebody can be late on their bills, they can have an immediate shut off in a lot sooner than what it used to be. So as part of that, in looking at folks that are on these fixed incomes, we looked at potentially providing a household income approach, where we would establish a program where you would essentially cap utilities at 6% of their monthly income. So individuals that are on fixed incomes that are seeing 20%, we would provide this assistance from the state of Indiana to ensure that these individuals are not getting put in a hole. Temporarily, these programs would help these individuals, making sure, particularly likely through your colder months, so where that cap would come on. In addition to that, putting a 3-year freeze on rate hikes. One of the reasons that you guys have seen your bills go up is because, even if you're using the same amount that you were last year, the amount that they are charging for that energy has actually gone up. So even if you said, I keep my temperature at 62, it's the same temperature as it was last year, why is my bill now, $200 more or $150 more? Well, there was a rate increase that had happened, and that's why. So as people have tried to adjust to this, we're looking at saying, okay, well, you guys have gotten, the utilities have come to us and said, we need a rate hike for a number of reasons. Our infrastructure is older. We need to be able to, update our infrastructure. If not, our infrastructure is going to fail. The grid's going to fail. We're going to have problems. We need money to invest now into ensuring that this energy is, we keep the lights on and that, the stuff doesn't fail on us. As a part of that, we said, okay, you've come to us for that. We're doing a 3-year freeze on that. In addition to that, when they do come to us for a rate hike, one of the aspects of it is, there are different criteria that they have to meet. If you want a rate hike, you have to, one of the things that we included several years back was affordability. Can the community afford the rate hike that you're asking for? So if Michigan City, if NIPSCO's saying, hey, our services, we need to be able to, increase the amounts that our consumers are paying. You have to make sure that the community is, it's affordable for the community. The problem with it was when that went into effect, it was not really well defined. It was this amorphous concept, and it really didn't have parameters that were well defined. So one of the initiatives is define what affordability is, because people are telling us in the community, you guys said that you put this rate hike out there. Specifically, what they're saying is it is not affordable, and they have the numbers to back them up. In addition to that, making sure that we're not shutting off, that the utilities are not doing shutoffs in the middle of the summer for low-income residents. And then on top of that, one of the, I talked about the push button, the push button shutoffs. If you have individuals that have gone behind on their NIPSCO bills and they get shut off, a lot of times they will try and scrounge money. They'll ask neighbors, they'll ask friends, they'll ask family, they'll go to township. And they have township assistance, it's just, they'll have assistance for that. And it says, okay, well, I was behind $1,000. I got $1,000 together. NIPSCO will say, great, here's your reconnection fee. Here's your $300 reconnection fee or your $500 reconnection fee. I forget what it is. Either way, I struggle to find out what the reconnection fee is if it's push button again. Or it's push button now. It's not as if you're paying somebody to come out and turn the stuff on. So eliminating reconnection fees, because it just seems redundant. It seems, punitive for individuals that are, in a hard spot already. If you've ever heard me talk at town halls, you've heard me talk about childcare. I consistently talk about childcare because it is one of the biggest issues that we're hearing from our employers. It's one of the biggest issues that we're hearing from our families, from our schools. The United States does a really bad job on this, and Indiana's, we're not unique in that. There are states that have gotten it right. Does anybody know the minimum age for going to school in the state of Indiana? What age you have to send your child? 7 years old. 7 years old. Do you know how much development happens with the child between the time that they're born and the time that they're 7 years old? And we're sitting here going, well, we 2 years ago we passed the bill that if your kid couldn't pass the state reading requirement by third grade, they were automatically held back. One test, and they were held back. And how detrimental that is to students in third grade, the dropout rate for a kid that's been held back in third grade, it is wild. The correlation is very, very strong. And so the idea that we're saying, well, we got to figure this out with these third graders. We got to figure out, they're not reading right, so we've got to hold them back. No, what you need to do is making sure that you're providing early childhood education like the rest of the developed world does, and you're seeing all of these other countries surpass us in education across the board. We do a very, very bad job just on childcare, which is essentially making sure people have a quality place to take their kids when they go to work. If there is childcare, most of the time it's unaffordable for folks that are basically making what they would, a week what they would pay to their childcare provider. And in that instance, you have a lot of people that don't enter the workforce for that specific reason. Why would I take my paycheck and give it to somebody else to raise my kid? That's essentially what's happening. We fully funded childcare we shouldn't say we fully funded childcare. We have fully funded what is the CCDF voucher. That is something that's provided to folks that are making less than about $45,000 a year for a household, to be able to take their kids to a child care center. And child care centers, regardless of whether or not your kid's using them, they gladly take CCDF students, because that's funding that comes in. That means there's more people that they can hire. That means that there are, the quality of child care that is going to be provided is going to be better. We've fully funded CCDF for years. This last year, the budget, we funded it. That along with On My Way pre-K, and then the Braun administration came in and they cut it. And we haven't gotten a good reason why. We don't know why, because employers have been screaming this from the rooftops. We need better childcare. And so the idea that we would cut this is just, it is decimated, it sent shockwaves really through the childcare field, because these places, whether you send your kid with a childcare voucher or not, those places are either going to have to do one of three things. They're either going to have to fire staff because they can't afford them. they're going to have to close, or they're going to have to raise your rates as somebody that does not use a child care voucher in order to pay for their current operations. None of which helps anybody. So the idea that we cut that funding does not make sense. On the issue of housing, I go and talk to all the high schools. I've gone to talk to Michigan City High School a number of times. I talk to the students there. I try to do it a couple times a year. I do the same at Chesterton. I do the same at Portage. And every time I've gone to one of these places, these kids, I know they get a bad rap, but they're listening and they're smart and they're looking at their futures and they feel grim. One of the things that I consistently hear from all of these different schools, I say, well, what are some of your concerns? I'm not joking. One, kids are typically worried about environmental issues, but two, that I'll never own a house. I'll never own a house. Did any of you ever think that you would never own a house when you were in high school? I mean, it just seemed like you were just gonna, you would just go to work, you would get a job. My dad worked in the newspaper industry. I have my uncles that worked in the mills. My grandfather worked in the mills. I could go and do that. I can go and get a job, and just seemed like that was what you would do. And these kids aren't wrong. I mean, the housing has gotten really, really, really difficult. We've seen what's happened as private equities entered the residential market. You have a lot of big corporations that own a lot of houses now, and that has really pushed out first-time home buyers. So in order to help that, coming from the state, giving a $3,000 first-time home buyer tax credit for the people that are renting in this state, which is the majority of people now. I think the majority of people in Northwest Indiana are renters now at this point, if the last figures I looked at was correct. But we do provide a rent deduction. A lot of people don't realize that. A renter's deduction of $3,000. As we've given these tax breaks with SB1, one of the things that we have not done from the state perspective was provide any type of assistance to renters. So looking at increasing the renter's deduction. In addition to that, cutting some of the red tape on some of the some individuals that would love to build, some of these backyard rentals. Some of these things where there's housing opportunities there, but there's a lot of bureaucratic red tape that goes around that. We want to make sure that we're opening those up. Kind of cutting down. I want to make sure that Randy gets up here. I've been up here for way too long. But in addition to that, addressing healthcare in this state is obviously a big, big issue. We have done a number of things to cut healthcare costs, but we have found is that you guys aren't feeling the effects of that. A lot of the insurers, the companies, the hospitals, basically everybody in the system before it gets to you has benefited from that in some of these initiatives. And so specifically the language that we're trying to put forward is that with the requirement that all of these cuts are being actually passed down to the consumers, to the citizens, to the folks that are actually paying into the system to support it. One of the bills that I'm carrying in particular, who here either has or they themselves or their family member or friend is on insulin? Anybody on insulin or a friend or family on insulin? It's probably the first time. Yeah. So
I have insurance right now. I got to point out I won't have insurance until February 1st. Northwest Health, they won't take care source anymore. I had to cancel it. Now my Anthem isn't going to pick up until February 1st.
See,
right now I'm without insurance.
So one of the things that I'm working on with this bill is, a couple years ago, probably about 5 years ago now, President Biden did an executive order that would have required a cap on insulin of $35 a month and a cap on yearly expenses for prescriptions at $2,000 a month or $2,000 a year. The Trump administration had basically come through and had repealed a number of those those executive orders. There was one that was put in that seems to get to the same effect, but we've heard from too many people that it doesn't have the same effect. So from the state level, here in the state of Indiana, restoring that $35 a month cap on insulin for folks per month, because it's just the idea that folks are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on insulin, something that they need absolutely to survive. It was just outrageous. And we know at the end of the day, here's the thing: is we know how much it costs to produce insulin. It doesn't cost that much, but when the market can dictate that it's priced that much, they'll do it. They'll take advantage of it unless told otherwise. Lastly, this is the last bill I'll talk about, and it's not on here. One of the bills that I had put forward. Does anybody remember the toll road bill from last year? Yeah, I'm sure you guys do. Do you guys like the toll road bill?
No.
Okay, all right. Well, I didn't either. I voted against it. I had an amendment to, one of the things that the bill did too was there used to be in law, and before that bill was passed, there was a part of the code that basically said, that you couldn't establish another toll road from one that already existed for 75 mile radius. And that basically took us out of the running. You couldn't put a toll road up in Northwest Indiana because we've already got a toll road right here, right in our backyard. Funny thing was, the arguments against the privatizing of the toll road 20 years ago, I was in the State House as an intern, and I heard from you guys back then about how this was a bad idea, and it made all the points that you could make all came to fruition. It was going to cost too much eventually. You were going to turn it to a private business that wasn't going to take as good care of it. They were going to charge way too much money. Nobody was going to drive it. Then they were going to drive on 94. 94 was going to get ripped up. There was going to be more accidents there. There was going to be more people driving on Highway 20, and you guys were all right. So, fast forward, feeling like I'm somebody that understands this, from being just luckily, having the fortune of being there 20 years ago and understanding, really how much we really hate the idea of tolling our roads or, potentially even turning them over to toll roads. I looked at how there was it was just so unpopular here, and looked at also one of the other issues that we've seen that is decently unpopular, but I can understand the aspect of it. You guys know about private school vouchers, right? We provide private school vouchers, and how these things were originally provided was, or proposed was, we wanted to make sure that individuals that were in lower income houses could afford to go to some of these private schools that were considered better schools. Last year, we made this extraordinary push to provide those vouchers to folks making unlimited amounts of money. And I'll use the extreme example. Elon Musk. Everybody knows who Elon Musk is, and if you don't, he's pretty much the richest man in the world. He's got 14 kids. If Elon Musk moved here to the state of Indiana with his 14 kids, Indiana would give him $8,000 for each one of those 14 kids to send them to private schools. That's it. I don't understand what Elon Musk would need with $8,000 for each one of his 14 kids from us, but he would get that. So, my idea is this, how it ties to toll roads. If you can provide, if the state of Indiana can do that for an individual that's got 14 kids, that's $8,000 per each, they can provide a voucher in the same amount to people that either work or live in a county that has a toll road. So I have a bill that's called basically the toll road transponder, an iPass for the working class, if you will. Putting an iPass in the cars of individuals that either work or live in a county that has a toll road in order to combat it. Because here's the thing is, and people have asked, well, how do you pay for that? The toll road aspect, how they sold the toll roads last year was this. Don't worry, we're the crossroads of America. And the studies that we have done show that 80% of the people that drive on 80, 94, and 65 and these roads that we want to turn into toll roads are from out of state. Okay. Instead of taking 100% of that new money, you're only going to be taking 80%. You're going to be leaving out the 20% because you're just giving us vouchers so we don't have to pay that. You will get this new amount of money, 80% of what you were asking for, from these out-of-state drivers. Leave us out of it. Because if our whole issue is affordability is a real issue, which we know it is, you shouldn't have to pay to get to and from work. You shouldn't have to pay to get to and from your family members that you want to go visit over in or over in St. Joe County or over in Lake County. So I mean that's the pitch. I have a hard time finding people that can justify giving out unlimited universal vouchers for education, but have a problem with it for transportation. So with that, I'll wrap up and give it over to Mr. Novak.
So the only thing I want to touch on is the effects of SB1, and just to give you an idea, almost everything that Rodney talked about over in the Senate is being proposed over in the House, and we work together. There's bills that he authors, and they're coming over there. So there's a lot of things happening. Being so new to this, in the House, we can introduce 5 bills. And being that I've been there for 8 weeks, I'm a little bit behind the schedule with the bills. So I've got some public safety things that I'm bringing, but what I'm also doing is co-sponsoring some other things. There's a lot of things that I'm attaching to and looking at over in the Senate and in the House. Anything pertaining to this area, the district, the lakefront, those things. So, and then next year, I'm hoping to have more definitive bills that I can pass. And it's very imperative downstate, and Rodney, and I can't speak for him because he's got the experience, but he knows this. But you got to work in a bipartisan fashion. I mean, we realize, especially in the House, being in a super minority, that and I feel confident that I'm able to do that, and I've got some things that working across the aisle to get things done. With that, the SB1, and we haven't seen what the Republicans have come out with on their fix. We know what we're talking about and the things we'd like to see, but there are so many things in there that need to be fixed. And it's ironic, and I'll have him chime in on this because you probably heard that the state of Indiana had a 2-point-something billion surplus.
Yep.
2.5. We'll take that number. 2.5. So when I got down to Indianapolis, they're like, well, it's not really 2.5 because we've committed $2 billion of that to shore up the budget. Because the projections for this year and next year were that there was going to be a shortfall. Not only that $2 billion, this is what I was told, not only that $2 billion that we shored it up with, but an additional $2 billion possible. It was like a doom and gloom projection. Thursday, I call it the Finance Committee, but it was the
Appropriations.
Budget had a meeting. The projections came out now, and that projection is that 2.5 is there. Oh, and we might have another 2.7, I think it is, on top of that. So in 27, the projection, this isn't real money at this point, is going to be in excess of $5 billion. And the state in SB1 cut local taxes that affect, and the state doesn't keep any property taxes. It's all local government's money. So they cut everybody's money down here, county, city, everybody else. They didn't touch any of their money. They cut all our money down here, and they expect you to do more with less, and then, oh, you need to go out and you need to impose all these income taxes to make up the difference and do everything. So it's to go from, I was with the city for 33 years, I'm with the county for 11 years, 10 months and 22 days. But now you go to the state and it's like, holy crap. I mean, it's like, every level of government's different, but there's so many moving parts, and the thing that I'll tell you is there's so many things that need to be fixed. It's hard for me as a newcomer right now today to sit here and tell you this is my number one thing that I'm taking care of. I mean, everything from the data centers to the roads to childcare to everything. I mean, everything is important. So if my goal is, if we can fix it, keep leaning forward and make things better. The other thing is, and he touched on it, aside from putting all these local income taxes on, the road tax, so community crossing, the state would give you $1 million. The county's max that out every time. So the county, 2 weeks ago, got an email that said, thanks for applying, see you next year. Got nothing. And in 27, I think it is, it goes into effect.
Yeah.
If you don't have a wheel tax, you only get 50% of that if you get it at all. So that's why, so they're telling everybody, they're telling the local authorities. They're not on the news telling everybody, hey, we cut your property taxes, but don't worry, we told the local authorities they can raise your taxes. At home, that's the remedy to this. This is my prediction, being in county government for as long as it is and knowing how this works. You're gonna pay more money in income tax and wheel tax than any savings you're ever gonna see from SB1. Not to mention, none of that fixes the schools. So the schools and the libraries, they totally left out in the open. And if you want a referendum, they go, oh, you can pass a referendum. Oh, but wait, you gotta do that on a presidential election year, which they know is gonna be very difficult for you to do. So, common sense. These aren't, a lot of these things that Rodney talked about and that we're working on are not common sense. They're not super difficult things. They're pretty simple things. Even with data center, giving us the information, doing this, getting zoning right, doing some of these things, we need the information to be able to do it, but it shouldn't be this hard. That's what I'm telling you.
Get the question.
So, yes, sir.
Back to cannabis for a moment. I'd like to ask each of you, should we legalize cannabis?
Yeah,
I know your answer.
I've filed bills on legalization of cannabis 4 years running, 5 years running. My predecessor was probably one of the first, that had ever advocated for that in the state of Indiana. I look at it like this. I think the position that we're in that's beneficial is we can see the mistakes that others have. Some of the other states that have, whether that is the lack of regulation, whether that is the lack of assistance to public safety following the legalization, whether that's taxation too much, taxation too little. I think that we're in a unique, the idea of being what would be either number 40 or 41 is one of those that we now can look at what the others have done. I think that with the reclassification from the Trump administration, I think that has opened up the door again. Our caucus will be filing, it's either going to be me or somebody in the caucus will be filing a bill on medical and recreational legalization. I mean, here's the thing. It's like we were talking about this earlier. It's not as if legalization is going to lead to increased usage. We've seen that in every other state. There isn't a massive spike. What you see is a safe and regulated market to an extent. Some states have gotten it wrong, like I said. But I think that that's kind of the benefit that we have is we can look and see who's done it right. In addition to that, we have watched hundreds of billions of dollars leave this state and go right out the door and right up Highway 20 and 12 into Michigan and over into Illinois. We would be fooling ourselves to think that those people aren't coming right back to the state. I think 60% of the 60% of the revenue that's been generated from the dispensaries in the southern portion of Michigan are Indiana residents.
What?
And I am not joking. That is because when you go into 60%. When you go into a dispensary in Michigan, they take your license. They have this data. They know where that money is coming from, and that's why they've lined the state line with dispensaries. I mean, there's it's
Cause and effect.
Very much so. So that has been my position on it. And I think that there are definitely things that we can invest in to ensure that we are addressing some of the issues that people are concerned about. People have brought up, well, what about mental health? It's a great conversation. We are underfunding mental health. If we think that, again, it's not as if people are going to be using and there shouldn't be more mental health issues. It should be the simple effect of now we have the funding in a regulated market in order to turn around and be able to invest in these things. So,
I need to answer. So my response would be is we can absolutely do it the right way, as he stated. There's no reason why we can't. And with the billions of dollars, I believe last year Michigan tweaked their tax a few cents, and it generated billions and billions of dollars up there. So there's a way to do things. The feeling, what I hear is downstate, they don't want anything to do with this. But no, I'd absolutely support it if it was done the right way. I mean, it needs to be done so that it's responsible. So, but I'd absolutely support it.
If I could, just one last thing on this. I think that the idea that we don't at least have medical in this state is very cruel. And I'll want to read you guys something. I had a very, very, very good friend of mine that recently passed away, struggled with esophagus cancer. And the other day I just happened to be looking through, I was trying to find something on one of the social media posts I had made, and I came across his comment, and I'd like to read it to you guys. It's from my friend Pat. He said, "Let me tell you a little story. I know a girl, he was trying not to reveal himself being the joking character that he always was. But I know a guy girl that many of you may know that was diagnosed with a very difficult and aggressive cancer. He left our state and went to a hospital in Illinois for treatment, as was the best around. Every single doctor, nurse, surgeon he worked with, which was a lot, told him that edibles and extracts were going to be the best thing to tackle some of the major side effects, especially the lack of appetite and nausea. When he told them that he was from Indiana, many of them suggested, without outright saying it, that maybe there was some place nearby that he can get something to help, even if it was illegal in his or her state. And without a doubt, I don't think he would be alive right now without it." Pat passed away a couple months ago. And the idea that he absolutely needed that, as somebody that was suffering with cancer, I think it's cruel that we don't provide that option. Go ahead.
I didn't really come up here to talk about the
That's
marijuana.
fine. You can change the subject.
But I will comment, that I think that there's too much competition with pharmaceuticals that our state is. We got the Lilly Foundation here. What I really wanted to get back to and what my question pertained to was that surplus funding that we talked about a little bit ago.
Absolutely.
And can you explain what exactly it's for if our governor did not even utilize it when we had a government lapse and our children were going hungry or what have you there? What is it? What is its main purpose?
So the surplus has been identified as part of the new revenue report. So this is new to us. Like, this wasn't something that came out in the budget last year. This is what they've discovered. 3 years ago, when we went through it was 3 years ago when we did the first budget that I'd ever been a part of as a senator. We ended up with a $6 billion surplus, and at that point, that was the question we were asking: why are we not reinvesting this money back into our citizens? This is their money. Why are we not spending it on them? Why are we not?
Everybody got a refund, got a small.
Yes, there was a small refund that came back when you did your state taxes, and so there was some that went back. But by and large, when you're sitting there going, okay, well, there's a $6 billion surplus. Some of it went to pay down things that were like pension fund issues and that were not issues. They were basically like, hey, let's just put this money into this prepaid prepaid fund right now. That put us, it was basically like storing it away again for a rainy day so we wouldn't have to worry about that even further down the road. The way that I look at it is this: if you are going to, the investments that you make today, and in things like childcare, things like education, things that we have, even SNAP funding, for example, these pay off dividends for your community in a way that that you're ensuring that these individuals don't fall into a system of either crime or negligence or poverty. These are things that ensure that you have stronger communities that make sure that your revenue does not drop, that you have stronger economies, that you have good, strong communities. We didn't do that, and then in this last budget, when we were in the middle of the budget, the report came out last April that we were actually in a $2 billion shortfall, and we had to find places to cut throughout the budget. So now we come back and it's like, well, no, wait, there is $2 billion. We kind of got blindsided by this. Really, we felt as if, nobody
knew about it till Thursday.
Exactly.
So realistically, we did not ever have to limit how many people are applying for Medicaid or how many people are applying for the CCDF.
I think that becomes the conversation now. I think that now is, okay, you guys have just totally missed the mark on this. What's going on, and how can we now use that funds to, those funds that we didn't think we had, to at least help put us back to where we were last year. So.
And speaking on healthcare, is there any hope that Indiana might lead the way or follow other states that have transitioned to single-payer healthcare for all in the state of Indiana?
It'd be a tough.
Is that a goal?
I think it would be a very tough road. Knowing the makeup of the legislature right now, the states that have moved forward with that.
So can
compared
you
to ours.
answer me this? Is there ever hope to have parties, both sides together to have this kind of open conversation with the community and not it just be a Democratic caucus here and a Republican caucus here? Can we all, I mean, I feel like Republicans want to keep their jobs. They should be hearing these things as well. And that should be one of their top priorities as well. So
you ever hear the saying that it's
partisanship?
You ever hear the saying that it's darkest before the dawn? You know, like the idea.
I know the song.
Yes.
But I won't sing it here.
But the idea that right now what we're seeing is, you know, we know that these cuts to Medicaid, and it is going to decimate rural communities. And I think that there's going to be awakening in rural communities when they go, what are you guys doing for us? Because we just lost our rural hospital. We don't have an OBGYN 4 counties wide. What are you doing? And I think that there is going to be a conversation where people, it's going to have to. I mean, at some point, things are going to have to break where you see this, you know, the polarization of the parties. People are going to go, we are either in this together or we're not. And I think that that is by far, healthcare is probably going to be one of those things that really starts to bring people together, because at the end of the day, you absolutely need healthcare to survive as a society. And so, you know, when these rural hospitals start closing up, I think that there's going to be conversations. I'm not saying that all of a sudden Indiana is going to become a blue state, you know, overnight. I don't think I think it's going to be different. I think what you're going to see is
just prove our independence and how much people power really comes into play. And I feel like, you know, I think that's important moving forward, that we continue to use our people power and we continue to bring the bipartisanship back, you know, and that's
I agree with you 110%. But here's what's got to happen. And last week in the Senate, there was a little breeze blowing that we haven't, this is me being a local government person, we haven't seen in a long time. So we had senators, I'm sorry, didn't mean to downgrade you, but we had senators on both sides of the aisle stood up for their constituents. In the House, I will tell you this, and if you looked at the votes for 5 days, there was committees, so it was probably 4 days of voting. It was almost straight down it was 60 some to the 29 on our side. Almost identical. The last day, a few more Republicans came over. They got a pass. So a pass just means you can vote against it, and we're not going to come after you. But majority of those representatives that voted for the redistricting did not want to vote for the redistricting. So when you hear them talk outside of there's hope. That's what I'm telling you. That's the only thing I can tell you is from the first day that I got there, which was like, holy crap, to now there's hope. I don't think it's going to happen overnight. I don't think it's going to happen in this session, but there's some people that are actually standing up, and the politics of it is some of it is they don't like the governor, and if we have to use that to our advantage, that they don't like the governor, so they're not going to go along with what's going on there. God bless them. As long as we're getting things done and fixing things and doing the right things, I'll take whatever the reason is. But so there's a little ray of sunshine that I see.
Yeah, I find it really difficult being so far away from Indianapolis to show up and speak about these things to the other people that need to hear it, and it feels so hard to accommodate my schedule to get out there and talk to the people.
Rodney talked about this at the last, we're in Chesterton. You guys are the ones that helped sell it. So when you guys come and you speak, yes, we want this, or no, we don't want that, that's imperative that we get the majority of the people out to speak. And I talked about this earlier at a
with you?
What's that?
We can ride with you next time?
By God, I got a truck, you gotta ride in the back, but with the government class last week, that Leadership LaPorte County, and Steve was there, he's a commissioner over in LaPorte County. I asked there's like 30, 40 people in this class. I call them kids because I'm old. But I said, let me put it to you so you understand what we're faced with up here. There's either a tax increase, you got to put in a wheel tax, it's a solar project, it's this, it's that. And 20 people show up and they're like madder than hell and they don't want it and they're screaming and yelling. LaPorte County has we'll call it 110,000 people. So you as an elected person, do you go, wait a minute, 20, 109,900 and whatever the difference is, must not have a problem with it because they're not speaking on it. And we're all getting very complacent or whatever the word is, laying back just going, let somebody else take care of it. Or if you're for it, we need to hear that as much as everybody else because in the same token, I think the other side, when we hear there's only 4 people that speak against or for something, and it's a controversial thing. It's hard to make that decision. And I always look at it as, if 20 are against and the rest of the whole county's for it, I mean, you understand, we're put in a very tough situation. And now you it gets even bigger when you're in the state and you got big districts, so it makes it even harder.
You got one more.
You got to go to the microphone.
Yep, hello again.
Got to go. Got to go.
I'd like to talk about 2 things: the legalized marijuana and taxes. You mentioned New Buffalo 15 weed stores there. I don't think it has anything to do with the laws of supply and demand. I don't think they're catering to Indiana residents. I think it's a failure of the New Buffalo municipality to give zoning okays to 15 shops within a 1 mile radius. I think that place is a clown show, and it's an advertisement for why not to have legalized marijuana, which I'm against. I will point out that when the Brooklyn Bridge was built, 90% of the people smoked cigarettes, right? But when you smoke weed on the job, you're not going to be building the Brooklyn Bridge. With regards to the taxes, it seems like whenever we bring up taxes today, you're saying your hands forced by SB1 or by the Republican opposition. I attended a wheel tax hearing here with Mayor Deutsch, and the culprit then was not SB1, it was the declining sales tax revenues from the casino. So in my opinion, and she may dispute this, I felt like, she acted like we were doing us a favor to raise our wheel taxes. So I am against any increased taxes. I don't want to become the next Illinois. All you have to do is look at Illinois and you see what's coming here. And I'm against spending increases too. And I'm also running for county council, LaPorte County. My name is Raymond Maloney. If you vote me in, I would cap or try in my best efforts to cap property tax, especially for seniors, especially for those on fixed incomes. And I would also never vote for a tax increase, and I would always vote against a spending increase. Thank you.
A couple things, Ray. On the issue of people building the Brooklyn Bridge on weed, if we legalized it, the state of Indiana, it would be treated like alcohol. So, I mean, you would get fired from your job like you would if you would come to work if you were drunk. So, I always push back on that because we hear that from some folks from time to time where they say, well, everybody's just going to get high. Well, if everybody goes high, it's as if they're also, I look at it as no different than how we should treat alcohol. And I've had people say, well, then outlaw alcohol as well. And that's a very wild discussion to have, but it opens up kind of the logic there. I've got to disagree about the idea that those and it's not 15, it's 30. It's like 30.
My neighborhood, I live over there.
Yeah.
I see them every day.
And
Half the permit application at 28.
yeah. And
that's a success.
But that goes to what I said earlier. We're in the unique position that we can see what other states do and address it accordingly. there's no doubt in my mind that Michigan City's not going to put up 30 dispensaries on the border there. Just from a business perspective of it, it's just, you're going to see people that are going to cannibalize, and that's just going to be a mess. But I do think that, some of these arguments that get pushed against it, I think are, and it's not to minimize the position, but like the idea that people are all of a sudden going to show up to work high, they're going to face the consequences if they do. One of the things that I do very much agree with you on, and it's actually part of our fix for the SB1. With SB1, we actually our position is we need to be helping those individuals that are in their households now that are on fixed income. So people that are over 65, disabled veterans, for example. We know that those individuals, many of these people built their house, right? Or their parents built their house, and they grew up in that house. They grew up in that neighborhood. That neighborhood raised their kids. They helped to raise everybody else's kids, and now they're probably helping raise the kids that are their grandkids' age in that neighborhood. There's no reason in this country that people that have worked their entire lives should not be in the same house that they wanted to grow up, that they grew up in, and they want to pass down to their families. As a part of that, that's the focus that we should have impressed upon and it's what we did impress upon the legislature last year, but it's what should have passed is help. If we're looking at providing property tax relief, help those individuals first, adjust accordingly. Don't put these local governments in a situation in which they can't afford to now provide either help for their police department, hiring freezes on their fire department. They can't pave the roads. They have to cut their funding for their parks. That's not that should have never been the approach, because what we were essentially told was they need to do less with more. And what we said was, go look at their budgets and tell me where you can do that, because we know that they could not. And unfortunately, they used Carmel, Indiana as the example. And they said Carmel's got mausoleums and they've got roundabouts and they spend all this money. Great. Take it up with Carmel. Don't make an example of the rest of the state based on the fact that you felt like this one community, which is incredibly affluent, has too much. Because there are plenty of towns out there that are on shoestring budgets, that have volunteer fire departments that, basically rely on volunteers for most of their staff. That's not going to cut it in these places, and you're going to see people that are uprising. You're going to have local governments that are just cleaned out next year, because they're going to end up, those 2027 elections are going to be very, very tough, because they're going to have a decision to make. Do we cut our essential sources? Do we cut public safety? Do we cut all these things, or do we have to raise a wheel tax or a local income tax? Do we have to just forego paving for the next 5 years or 10 years and wait till it's more expensive in the next 10 years? Or do we have to raise our wheel tax in order to get state money? I mean, they've put them in an untenable situation. So please do not be so hard on your local officials. They are...
Indiana families face those same types of decisions.
Absolutely.
So we're not asking the government to do anything that a family doesn't.
Well, I'll say this. I think that's where we're wrong, though, because ultimately, they're we're going to not have, we're going to either have cuts to essential services for the entire community. You're not talking about just a family. You're talking about for entire communities. I mean, and I think that is incredibly problematic, specifically for your school districts. I think that the school districts, one of the things...
That's another topic.
That's a whole other topic, but yeah. So I did want to mention that. One of the things, I know we don't have a whole lot of time, but one of the things that I did also want to mention that I forgot to earlier as well, and I think it is pertinent here for Michigan City. Last year we did see a spike in gun violence, or we saw that there was a lot of gun violence that was pretty prevalent out there. And as part of the plan to address that, or one of the things that we're trying to do, and I'm going to have Randy help me carry it in the House, I've got a bill that's going to add LaPorte County and Porter County to the Indiana Crime Guns Task Force. That is a task force that was created a couple of years ago, and there's only a very few counties that are part of that task force. Indianapolis, Marion County being one of them, and last year they added Lake County. This is additional resources for Sheriff Heeg and Sheriff Ballin in these two counties to be part of this group that are addressing this and have had fantastic results. So as we see kind of some of this, gun violence that is becoming pervasive, I mean, we see this, we see that it is, you see some stuff that's come over from Chicago that has been problematic. We've seen guns that have come over, that are kind of decimating some of these communities, particularly in Indianapolis. And we can't act like we're in a vacuum. We can't have counties that are just, in silos. We have to have this coordination. And so one of the things was to help our local law enforcement here by including us in this gun task force. Other than that, there was something you wanted to say. Sorry, go ahead.
So I was just going to address Ray a little bit, but Ray's gone. But I'm all for less taxes. I'm all for no new taxes, 100%. But this SB1, there was a way to do what they did, but do it over time. Do it gradually so that you're not forcing local government entities to make drastic slashing cuts. And I use the county because that's where I came from, is $6 million in 3 years. That's a lot of money to make up. So and the state's telling you, and it's great to sit there and go, no new taxes, less government. That's great. I personally don't think state legislators should be sitting down in Indianapolis going, you can do more with less. You can do more with less. It should come more, the local authority, for us to sit there and slash it and go, now you got to cut services, police, fire. The biggest part of the Michigan City budget is police and fire. Hands down. It's the biggest part because it's the biggest. I was there for a long time. I know. They told us. And it's the easiest one that somebody goes, oh, we can do by with less. But the minute something goes wrong, then you want answers there too. So it's not as simple as just going, a campaign speech that says, I promise this, I promise that. Until you get in there, and this gentleman sitting right here knows firsthand more than anybody because he came to meetings for years and years and years going, we need to do this. And now that he's in there, he's going, man, until you're on the inside, you don't understand exactly what it is. It's not, if it was that simple, we'd all be doing it. It's not. There's so many moving parts and there's so many people affected by every little thing that you do, especially when it comes to money. So,
one of the things that you guys got was a handout where it shows all of your cuts. I'm not going to go through all of it. It's pretty self-explanatory. We made it as easy to read as possible, but this demonstrates what those cuts are going into the next three fiscal years. So countywide, just overall, you're going to see $4 million that is cut from the county in 26. On top of that, the following year, an additional basically $6.5 million cut in 27, and then over $6.5 in 28. I don't have to tell you guys how much money that really is when you break it down to what these services would have gone to. Michigan City alone is going to lose 2.73 in that time span. So that to a municipal budget is, it's just absolutely debilitating. All right, we're going to take a couple questions because we do have to wrap up here in a little bit.
Tommy?
Yes, this is Tommy Kolovic from 1316 Ohio Street or 7070 30th West, 125 North, LaPorte. Pick your poison. Gee, it'd be fun if we can do that again. There's Al Whitlow standing back there. I just got to think. Now, they used to talk about this 30 years ago, and I asked Congressman Mervan about this when he had his town hall forum. Is there this economic development related? Is there anything that can be done at the state level that we can have a third I-94 interchange at County Line Road? There's all kinds of land out there that's prime for development. I think that would be a game changer for. I know the County Line Road is actually under the jurisdiction of Porter County, but I think that would be huge. The other thing, I know you probably had to respond to calls to this, Randy. Is anything that can be done with this an NDOT issue? Is there anything that can be done at the state level to have a traffic signal put in at US 20 in County Line Road? There's been a lot of fatalities there. The other thing is, this comes up on social media. A lot of people complain about this all the time. Is there anything that can be done at the state level about the deplorable, disgusting, unsanitary conditions of the Michigan City Port Authority's bathhouse in Lot 1 in Washington Park? It's under the they say complain.
That's the easiest one out of the bunch.
They complain to the Port Authority.
Right.
Well, that's like talking to a Brit. Somebody said talk to your state rep. There's another issue with the bathhouse there that I won't bring up, but
I'll call Tim Freeman. I'll call the mayor about the bathhouse.
I know they painted it, but it's always bad.
The problem is it's a public restroom and it's hard to maintain sometimes with that. We dealt with that for years, but no.
What about the other? Do you want to take it?
The other, and I'll be happy to reach out to, there's a representative that I know has a lot more pull being new, to INDOT about regarding the exchange out there at 20 and County Line Road. I know they talked about putting in a 94, interchange out there for years, but I don't know that it's anywhere on their radar. So I'd have to look into it. Yeah, definitely. I will tell you, one of the things I just found out, there's somebody that owns some property out there near an interchange, and the family owned it. And when the interchange came in, it's still in the family's name. And the family wanted to deed it to the state. We just want it off the books. We want it to be gone. The response we got back from the state is the state's not allowed to accept donations. So they go, and we're not in the market right now to buy it, but if we ever do a project there, we'll come and we'll pay market value. They just want to give it to the state. And there's a lot of things that need to be fixed up.
I want to go back to your marijuana comment and treating it the same as alcohol. Alcohol gets out of your system in about 8 hours or so. Marijuana doesn't get out that fast. So I'm not exactly sure how you're going to be able to treat those two the same. And then I want to go back to the gun task force.
Yeah.
What exactly does that involve?
So to the first point, it's not about how long it stays in your system, it's how long you're intoxicated by it. So I think that was one of the questions that we had from folks that were in the workforce sphere that were like, well, it's hard for us to test whether or not somebody's intoxicated. Some of these other states have actually moved forward on intoxication tests to make sure that their people aren't coming to work high.
See, I'm glad. I'm allergic to it, so I wouldn't be able to do it anyway.
Yeah. I mean,
and I've built up a tolerance now, so I can't really drink much alcohol either anymore. So I'm kind of safe on both of those.
Yeah.
But what a way for the state of Indiana to make tax money.
You're not kidding.
That they're losing. They're losing right now.
And then to your other point, your other question, remind me again.
The task force.
The task force. So
I'm a gun owner.
Yeah.
So I don't want somebody coming in.
No, it's not that. This is more about following when guns are used, following where they've been used at, and like basically the resources that are being provided to both address gun violence in these communities, and then being able to make sure that you're not seeing illegal guns. Yeah, basically.
The Michigan City Police Department moved a block and a half from my house.
Yeah.
Gunfire went up tremendously.
Well, that's unfortunate. I'm sorry to hear that. But yeah, this is not a coming for your guns, put you on a registry thing. No, please. I'm glad you asked that question just so I could clarify that because
so I fought for all these amendments that I want to maintain.
Yeah. Absolutely. If you asked that question, somebody else probably had the same thing, so I appreciate it. But yeah, it is not a registry. This is not a, if you have a gun, you better come and report it. No. This is, tracking gun crime only and making sure that they're addressing it in these, and providing extra resources when this stuff starts to happen. Because there's nothing will perpetuate gun violence more than gun violence itself. You have a shooting in the neighborhood, guess what? Those people who were victims, or the family that were victims, or the gang that was involved, there's going to be retaliation. And being able to provide resources to address that, figure out who's involved, where they're getting their guns, because a lot of times they're not legally purchasing them. So, good question though.
The state of Indiana has a HIDA, I think is the correct word. So there's a drug task force that works northern Indiana here also. Because the thing, and somebody put it into perspective years ago. With Lake Michigan there, all the truck traffic, all the railroads, everything has to come around the south part of the lake. And it comes right through LaPorte County. So we got probably more roads and everything for the population than a lot of people. infrastructure, whether it's fiber, everything comes right through this area. That might be one of the reasons why data centers are looking here, just saying. But they're not, okay. But I agree with Rodney. The guns, I'm a big hunter. Lifelong member of the NRA. So, but I believe you gotta be responsible 110%. This is tracking, helping to better track the gun movement in this 3-county district. It's not, it's absolutely has nothing to do with we're coming, we want you to register your guns, we want you to do this, we want you to do that. Absolutely not. This is.
All of our weapons have been purchased legally.
Right,
Background
right.
checks and everything.
Absolutely. So no, this is strictly for criminals, crime, and tracking that movement, because there is a lot of movement of it around here.
Let's do the last question.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
One last question, and we gotta get wrapped up here.
Okay, so I have a friend who has many more decades being involved in her local politics and following. And of course, speaking of all the cuts to the school systems, blah, 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 everywhere else that's on the sheet that's getting cut. And someone else, I think, barely touched on it earlier about the casino funds and that those are lower, but we just recently raised the luxury tax by $2, and we are one of the states that has legalized gambling, whereas other states don't have that. And she mentioned that a long time ago, the lottery taxes were what's supposed to be propped up and helping our school system. So where are the lottery taxes? Where are the casino taxes? And where are the luxury tax on cigarettes? Where is those funds being appropriated to? Are they held in a thing before they're appropriated? Or are they directly appropriated to something in general, in a specific?
So it's a great question. Actually, last year, your mayor did a damn good job coming down and advocating for Michigan City in particular.
I unfortunately have Mayor Dermody, but that's okay.
No, I'm sorry. Okay, yeah.
We like Mayor.
Mayor Tom's an awesome guy, man. He really truly is. He's fantastic. So Mayor Angie, in particular, though, she came down to make sure she was advocating for Michigan City because it had been discovered that the funds that were being taken from the casinos were actually not being appropriated correctly or essentially distributed correctly. There was the potential that Michigan City was never going to see the money that had been owed for now probably 5 or 6 years to it. And when I tell you she was down there constantly to make sure that there was millions of dollars that were on the table that should come back to Michigan City, she was able to bring that money back.
So that's a local sense, but what about the lottery taxes and the luxury taxes on cigarettes? Because isn't that a statewide?
So for example, like that, the money that's collected from the casinos, you're saying the lottery tax and are you talking about casino tax or are you talking about?
So they're different taxes, right?
Correct.
Because we got the lottery, the Powerball, the scratch-offs, all that, but then we also have gambling, and so those are separate.
So there's a lot of these go to the general fund. The general fund is essentially used to fund, that's where you basically take that money, and then that's when it is appropriated throughout the state. That pays for a number of different things, along with property. And some of them have, restrictions. Some of them are, designated for specific things. Like for example, the health, not health, but the cigarette tax. You called it the luxury tax that goes on.
I believe that's what I heard it called last year.
Correct.
Whatever.
So that will. I believe, and I'm I apologize. I'll definitely make sure to look this up, but I'm fairly certain that goes. That essentially goes towards the amount of funding that we put forward for healthcare in the state of Indiana. That was essentially the conversation that we had last year. I'm fairly certain it's been a minute, and I apologize, but I'm almost positive. I take a minute, and before we wrap up, I'll get you make sure that I correct it if it's wrong.
You know where to find me.
Yeah,
I'm on your Facebook.
I'm fairly certain that
we can talk again.
But yeah, some of these are dedicated. Some of them go to dedicated funds, but the vast majority goes to the general fund, which then gets appropriated to everything from your state agencies, your administrations, to the different programs that we provide.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
When they do that, they do it with a specific reason for a specific project or fund or to shore things up. So a lot of those, just like you know, motor vehicle fund. You can only use those for certain things. Different, I mean, so, yeah, it's not, I don't, there's no big magic pot of money down there besides the soon to be $5 billion at some point maybe, so. Then we'll talk, but that's 27.
Yeah. All right, well, any last question, any last comments or anything like that? All right, if not, thank you guys so much for coming out. I know that, you know, coming out on a Saturday, it's tough, but thank you so much for spending your time with us. You guys had great questions. Thank you for being engaged. If you ever want to contact us, my information is at the bottom of the handout that I provided.
Mine's on.
Randy's is on the bottom of this. Please do. I can't tell you how many folks will just say, "Oh, well, I had a question, but I wanted to wait. Yeah, I didn't know when to ask you." Reach out. I mean, we are quote unquote a part-time legislature, but we are your state representative and your state senator all year round, 24/7.
And you can always Google my name and get my cell number, my personal.
And here's the thing too. There are times that you may want to reach out about something that you don't even think is necessarily a state issue. We'll help you find answers. I mean, that is absolutely our job, and I tell people this all the time. We take this job very, very seriously. We love being able to represent you. We love being able to make sure that even if it's not something that we can personally do, we probably can find you answers to help in the ways that we can. Whether that's connecting you with trust. I've helped people find help with trustees. I've helped people that if they've had issues, for example, with unemployment. Hey, I lost my job and I'm having problems with the DWD. One phone call sometimes is all it takes. So please take advantage of that. There's nothing more that I would hate than somebody say, "Well, I didn't know what to do," and I could have helped provide an answer a year ago. So
even if you're not in the immediate district, since my district's kind of small, happy to help. Never turned anybody down, even when I was on the county council. I was always helped everybody. So
thank you guys.
Thank you.
All right. See, I don't know if I can chat one or both of you. What's that? I said, I don't know if I can chat one or both of you.
Do what? What are you going to do?
Oh, you're gonna just question. Quick, what are you going to do? I'm going to talk about the